the type to beat up the bad guy when things turn ugly.
My name is Waffles, and I'm a government whistleblower turned political commentator, and this is the last 24 hours in the news. Today is August 24th, 2025. It is 11:09 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Here are the top U.S. news highlights for the past 24 hours. Haba appointment ruled unlawful. A federal judge ruled Alina Haba's appointment as acting U.S. Attorney for New Jersey exceeded the legal 120-day interim term without Senate confirmation. This may invalidate actions she took, including indictments. National Guard troops stationed in Washington, D.C. under the Crime Emergency Order will begin carrying M17 pistols or M4 rifles following defense approval. They were unarmed during their initial deployment. Pentagon planning is underway for National Guard and possibly active duty deployments in Chicago and Baltimore despite no formal request. Democratic leaders and politicians are pushing back strongly. Proxy advisory firms Glass Lewis and ISS have sued Texas over curbs on ESG guidance, citing First Amendment violations. Simultaneously, Democratic attorneys general are challenging the Trump administration's proposal to rescind the EPA's greenhouse gas endangerment finding, which underpins key public protections. A Government Accountability Office GAO report reveals that fewer than 400 EV charging ports have been installed nationwide through the $7.5 billion federal infrastructure effort, covering only 68 stations across 16 states. California and 15 other states have filed a lawsuit against the U.S. Transportation Department, alleging the improper withholding of $3 billion in EV funding. Money going missing. Infrastructure security moves. Undersea cable protections proposed. The Federal Communications Commission, FCC, is advancing new cybersecurity rules to prevent foreign adversaries, notably Chinese firms, from accessing undersea fiber optic cables that carry 99% of global internet traffic. The proposed regulations would ban certain equipment, incentivize U.S. shipping and technology, and streamline license processes for secure operators. COVID vaccine access potentially restricted. A limit fall COVID vaccine policy, potentially excluding healthy adults under 65, could complicate access in California. Experts argue the change may increase disease risk, particularly for underserved groups. First U.S. human case of New World screwworm, a rare parasitic infestation, flesh-eating larvae, was confirmed in a Maryland resident who recently traveled from Guatemala, the first case in the U.S. this year. The risk to public health is deemed very low, but agriculture and livestock sectors are on alert. The USDA plans a sterile fly production facility in Texas to help prevent outbreaks. Ongoing legal actions against the Trump administration. Haba appointment ruling highlights key legal boundaries. The invalidation of Haba's post underscores legal constraints on unilateral interim appointments without Senate review. South Korea seeks reset in China ties. South Korea is actively working to normalize and strengthen economic relations with China. Special Envoy Park Byeong-swang, representing President Lee Jae-myung, met with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi and delivered a personal invitation for President Xi to attend the upcoming APEC summit. The move comes as South Korea navigates rising geopolitical tensions while hosting critical talks with U.S. President Trump. High-stakes summit between Trump and South Korea President. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung will meet U.S. President Trump in Washington for a pivotal summit. Agenda items include trade dynamics, defense spending obligations, and coordination over North Korea's security threat. Lee, who previously traveled to Beijing to smooth tensions, aims to maintain a balanced diplomacy amid shifting regional alignments. China warns U.S. protectionism threats agri-ties. China's ambassador to the United States, Xi Feng, cautioned that rising U.S. protectionist policies are jeopardizing agricultural cooperation. Soybean exports to China plummeted by 51% in the first half of 2025 due to retaliatory tariffs. Xi called for disengagement of politics from trade and emphasized the importance of agricultural ties for both nations. And here are the most recent U.S. trade and economic highlights from the past 24 hours. China warns U.S. protectionism threatens agricultural ties. China's ambassador to Washington, Xi Feng, criticized increasing U.S. protectionist measures such as rising tariffs and restrictions on farmland ownership as jeopardizing agricultural cooperation. U.S. farm exports to China dropped 53% year over year in the first half of 2025, including a 51% decline in soybean sales. Chinese copper maker opens U.S. factory to evade tariffs. U.S.A, a Chinese copper flat wire producer, is building a $100 million factory in Grand Prairie, Texas. This strategic move allows it to avoid a 50% tariff on Chinese imports and is expected to produce 3,000 metric tons by 2028, strengthening its competitiveness with U.S. clients like Stellantis. I don't know how I feel about this. I'm very worried that BRICS is coordinating with Trump to do economic harm to the United States. And I also don't like that they are moving into Texas, that this is what is being announced, because there's some very shady things going on in Texas, which I feel look like an overthrow. So this could potentially indicate some collusion taking place. And again, market manipulation, but this case would be on a global scale. So I'm just expressing my concerns in regards to that as we report here. Indian economy braces for new U.S. tariffs. The Indian rupee is under pressure ahead of additional U.S. tariffs, up to 50% total, set to start August 27th. This follows India's continued purchases of subsidized Russian oil. India's bond market is also jittery, with yields rising following proposed GST tax reforms. Economic indicators like Q1 GDP and industrial output are on watch. Asian markets rally on rate cut optimism. Asian stock markets rose on strong prospects of U.S. interest rate cuts, with the likelihood of a September cut now priced at 84%. Markets are also watching Nvidia's upcoming earnings closely, anticipating a significant earnings rise that could sway global financial sentiment. And remember, kids, the stock market is not the economy. Just because the Dow Jones or the S&P might be performing does not mean that wages are up, jobs are secure, inflation is under control, or that people are thriving. Here's the upcoming weather for the next few days. West Plains and South. Dry and mild, ideal for outdoor activities with no extreme heat or wildfire danger. Southeast and Gulf Coast, some afternoon showers possible Sunday through Monday. Heat stress is minimal. No significant severe weather on the horizon. Northeast and Mid-Atlantic, slight chance of isolated rain early in the week, otherwise cooling and calm. Southern California and coastal west, mild conditions, no foreseen heat waves or fire risks. East Coast beaches, heightened beach and swimming risks due to rip currents. Exercise caution, especially in the eastern seaboard. Stay updated with local marine advisories. Low-lying and drainage areas midweek. Be mindful of potential localized flooding on Wednesday. And here are the top international news highlights from the past 24 hours. Middle East tensions escalate. Israeli strikes on Yemen. Israeli airstrikes targeted the Yemeni capital Sana'a in retaliation for Houthi missile attacks aimed at Israel. The strikes resulted in at least 6 deaths and dozens of injuries, marking a significant escalation in regional hostilities. Central bankers express fears over the annual Jackson Hole synopsism. Central bankers from around the world express concerns about the Federal Reserve's aggressive interest rate hikes, fearing potential global economic instability. If he cuts the interest rates too quickly, then it could cascade into a recession. And because of the fact that we are still facing inflationary risks due to the tariffs, which otherwise we would not have the mass scale inflation that we have right now, unnecessary tariffs that happen for like no fucking reason while we're all just chilling here. All of a sudden an asshole got into office and decided to jack up the price of everything when we're just coming out of a pandemic. So yeah, they may express concerns about the Federal Reserve's interest rate hikes. But that is the risk if we do not keep the interest rates high during a time of inflation. Unfortunately, if people borrow like crazy, then what is going to happen is debt is going to soar and the economy is going to crash anyways because people are not making enough money due to the fact that inflation is so high to be able to make up for any money that is loaned to them, and that is why interest rates are high right now. Asia-Pacific development, South Korea-China relations. South Korea special envoy convoyed Seoul's intent to normalize and strengthen economic ties with China, aiming to move beyond recent tensions. Thailand's automotive industry. Thailand reported an 11.4 year-over-year decline in car production for July, attributed to weakened demand and global supply chain challenges. U.S. domestic affairs. National Guard armed in D.C. U.S. National Guard troops patrolling Washington, D.C. as part of Trump's crime emergency initiative have begun carrying weapons. Critics argue that the deployment is politically motivated. Other than that, let's just go back to the whiners who are complaining about the Jackson Hole synopsis. Central bankers from around the world. I would like to know who these central bankers are, because to me, this sounds like they are not very well educated on what they're doing, or they are actively involved with people who are engaging in economic espionage, and that could be why they have their perspective. Alright, we're now just going to go through a real quick list. Jerome Powell, U.S. Federal Reserve. Recently, Powell has acknowledged a challenging situation where high interest rates, while helping combat inflation, now pose a downside risk to the labor market and economic growth. That makes no sense to me. I'm sorry, but I cannot see a basis for that. The inflation is posing a downside risk to the labor market. I don't see how a lack of borrowing, which is what inflation is, interest rates are interest rates on loans. So then I don't understand in any way how high interest rates would have an impact on the labor market or economic growth. Inflation is the problem. Let's take care of the inflation, and then we can think about interest rates. I'm sorry, just from a rational perspective, what is jacking up the cost of everything right now, including business, really driving some people towards out of business due to the fact that, for me, for example, as a business owner, all of a sudden the price of everything I was doing had to change. I had to go in there and change the prices on everything, and now everything's jacked up, and people don't want to buy shit because inflation is so high. People are focused on only things that they need. Discretionary spending is down. That means that people are not buying crap they don't need. That means if you provide a service like a restaurant or clothing or things that people don't need right now, like food and housing, they're not going to fucking spend money on it. So as far as what is creating a downside risk to the labor market, I don't think it's inflation, I don't think it's interest rates. I think it's inflation. So anybody who's willing to buy into this bullshit has no knowledge of economics and may not even understand what the word inflation is, not inflation. Why do I keep getting those two mixed up? Interest rates are, and why they matter. I get it. People are frustrated. Everything's expensive right now, but you know what really pisses me off is the cost of my groceries being damn near $200 every time I fucking go to the store. I bet you if we cut that expense out of the window, things would look a lot better. So while we can spend all this time bitching about interest rates, let's take a look at what's really affecting the cost of fucking everything right now. And it's the tariffs and inflation, not interest rates. Thank you for attending my TED Talk for this great educational moment. Christopher Waller and Michelle Bowman dissented from the Fed's decision to leave rates unchanged, citing concerns over the weakening labor market. Andrew Bailey, Bank of England, slow growth and poor productivity, has acknowledged a difficult position of managing policy when potential growth is low. Adrian Orr's tenure, following a period where painfully high interest rates led to one of New Zealand's, he's from New Zealand, worst recession in decades. During his time, he faced criticism for aggressive rate hikes used to combat inflation. Isabel Schnabel, European Central Bank. Schnabel has taken a firm stance that the current interest rates are appropriate for managing inflation. Michelle Bullock, Reserve Bank of Australia. And she says that rates need to remain restrictive for longer. So the only person that I'm seeing that's even currently making an argument, which I'm really surprised to see, is that Powell acknowledged a challenging situation where high interest rates, while helping combat inflation, now pose a downside risk to the labor market. He is literally the only one that I am seeing that is making this argument. So as far as outlets that are reporting this, we've got the New York Times, Bloomberg, CNBC so far, all loyalist bootlicker media outlets. What is this? FederalReserve.gov. While the labor market appears to be in balance, it is a curious kind of balance that results from a marked swing in both supply of and demand for workers. This unusual situation suggests that downside risks to employment are rising, slowing in supply and demand for workers. Well, I mean, if you're going to deport everybody, then there's going to be a lack of supply of workers. Other than that, if Trump's just going to use the tariffs to flip the on-off switch with the economy so he can manipulate the markets, then yeah, nobody's going to be hiring because none of us know what to expect with our fucking businesses because some dumbass is fucking with literally everything and making it impossible to run a fucking business. It's like every day, what's the price going to change on this? What's the price going to change on that? Oh shit, people are fighting over ranch dressing in the grocery store. So I'm not even seeing where Powell actually said that, but that's what Google's AI is reporting to me, that he supposedly made those statements. That's not what I'm seeing in the Federal Reserve report. So anyways, this is the last 24 hours in the news. Today is August 24th, 2025. It is 11:29 p.m. Mountain Standard Time.
So the Olympics is great. And Johnny, for the others, you know, the World Cup, Johnny is the head of it. We had our top people, Wasserman. They all came in on the Olympics, and then I saw Johnny. And we got the World Cup, too. And, you know, it's only because they rigged the election that I'll be your president representing you there. You know, I got both of them. I got the Olympics, and I got the World Cup. And I said, you know, it's too bad. One was in 2026, and the other was in 2028. And I said, I won't be there. I won't be your president. But then they rigged the election, and now we won, so I'm going to be your president for the Olympics and for the World Cup. So, Johnny, thank you for the World Cup, and everybody, thank you for the Olympics. We're going to have a great time.
Hey guys, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment to my videos. And also, don't forget to check out my shop where you could get this awesome Real Patriots Punch Nazis t-shirt. America, fuck yeah. And if you go to the link tree in my bio on most platforms, it's got links to everything, all of my stuff. You can find my shop there. I'm on eBay. You can also get this cool Exterminate MAGA sticker, because MAGA's fucking cockroaches. And fuck MAGA. Abolish MAGA. Fuck you, MAGA.